The sun hung like a vengeful god over Iron Hollow, Wyoming, in the summer of 1882, baking the earth until it cracked like old leather. Dust swirled through the air, stinging the eyes of anyone foolish enough to linger on the main street. Folks said this town was built on dreams of gold, but all it seemed to churn up was desperation. And that's where our story begins, with a scream that cut through the haze like a knife. Not just any scream, but the kind that stops your heart and makes you wonder what kind of hell could produce such a sound. Who was it? And why did it feel like the whole town held its breath, pretending they didn't hear? Stick around, because this tale of courage and secrets will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about justice. His name was Elias Kane, a man whose face bore the scars of a life spent running from his past, from the law, from himself. At 32, he was a wanderer with a Colt revolver on his hip and a heart that hadn't felt warmth in years. He rode into Iron Hollow that morning, his horse limping from a long trail, his canteen dry as the desert he'd crossed. He wasn't planning to stay long, just enough to water his horse and move on. But as he tied his mare to a post outside the saloon, that scream stopped him cold. It came from the edge of town, near the old livery stable, a ramshackle building half collapsed under the weight of neglect. Elias's hand rested on his gun as he moved toward the sound, his boots kicking up clouds of dust. The street was eerily quiet, save for the creak of a sign swinging in the wind. He rounded the corner and saw her, a woman, no older than 20, crumpled against the stable wall like a broken doll. Her auburn hair was matted with dirt, her dress torn at the shoulder, revealing a patchwork of bruises that told a story of violence. Her eyes, green as the Wyoming plains after rain, were wide with fear, darting toward the shadows as if expecting a predator to emerge. "Hey," Elias said, his voice low, like he was coaxing a spooked colt. "You're safe now. I ain't here to hurt you." He took a step closer, and she flinched, pressing herself tighter against the splintered wood. Her hands clutched a small, tarnished locket, the kind you'd expect to hold a lover's portrait or a mother's keepsake. Blood trickled from a cut on her lip, and her bare feet, calloused and raw, suggested she'd been running for miles. Before Elias could say another word, a shadow loomed behind him. He spun, hand on his gun, to face a man in a crisp black suit, a rarity in this dust-choked town. The man's face was sharp like a hawk's, with eyes that gleamed with cold calculation. "You're meddling in business that ain't yours, stranger," he said, his voice smooth but laced with menace. "That woman's a runaway. Belongs to my employer. Mr. Vernal, step aside, or you'll regret it." Elias sized him up clean. Boots, a silver watch chain, and a derringer tucked under his coat. This wasn't some hired thug. This was a man who carried out orders with precision. "Belongs," Elias repeated, his tone hard as flint. "Last I checked, folks ain't property." The woman's eyes flicked to Elias, a flicker of hope battling the terror in her gaze. The man in the suit smirked. "You don't know Iron Hollow, do you? Mr. Vernal owns this town, the mines, the saloon, the law. That woman's got a contract, signed and legal. She works for him until her debt's paid." He stepped closer, his hand hovering near his coat. "Walk away, drifter, or you'll be digging your own grave." Elias felt the woman's gaze on him, heavy as a winter storm. Her fingers tightened around the locket, and for a moment, he saw his sister's face, long gone. Lost two men who thought they could own people. He couldn't walk away, not this time. "What's your name, ma'am?" he asked, ignoring the man in the suit. Her voice was barely a whisper, cracked from thirst or fear. Clara Wade." She swallowed hard, her eyes pleading. "Please, don't let him take me back." The man in the suit laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Clara Wade, that's rich. You gave up your name when you signed on with Vernal. Now come along, or this gets ugly." He reached for her arm, but Elias stepped between them, his hand steady on his revolver. "Touch her," Elias said, his voice low and dangerous, "and you'll be the one regretting it." The air crackled with tension, the kind that precedes a gunfight. Somewhere in the distance, a crow cawed, as if warning the town that blood was about to spill. What would you do, folks? Stand your ground for a stranger, or walk away from a fight you can't win? Let me know in the comments, because Elias Kane's about to make a choice that'll change everything. The air in Iron Hollow grew heavier as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of blood red and gold. Elias Kane stood his ground, his hands still resting on the grip of his Colt, staring down the man in the black suit who'd called Clara Wade a runaway. The man's name, he learned, was Harlan Voss, right-hand enforcer for Mr. Varnell, the mining baron who held this town in an iron grip. Clara clung to the locket around her neck, her breathing shallow, her green eyes darting between Elias and the shadowed street where townsfolk whispered and watched. The standoff felt like a fuse burning toward a powder keg, and Elias knew one wrong move could light it up. What kind of debt could chain a woman like this to a man like Varnell? And why did Clara's locket feel like the key to it all? Stay tuned, because this tale's about to take a turn you won't see coming. Back off, Voss, Elias said, his voice steady as granite. Clara's not going anywhere with you. Harlan Voss's smirk widened, but his eyes were cold as a snake's. You're new here, Drifter, so I'll give you one chance to walk away. That woman signed a contract fair and square. She owes Varnell for saving her life. Food, shelter, medicine, that don't come free. Clara's voice broke through, Ron trembling. Saving me? He locked me in a room for weeks, fed me scraps, and she stopped, her hand flying to her mouth as if she'd said too much. Elias caught the flicker of shame in her eyes, and it stirred something deep in him, a rage he hadn't felt since he'd lost his sister to men who preyed on the desperate. What kind of work does Varnell expect from her? Elias asked, though the answer was already clawing at his gut. Voss's smile turned oily. Whatever he needs, cleaning the miners' barracks, serving drinks at the saloon, maybe more. If she's smart, the implication hung in the air, like smoke, and Clara's shoulders hunched, as if trying to shrink into herself. Elias took a step closer to Voss, his voice low and dangerous. You're telling me a woman's gotta sell her soul to pay for a crust of bread? That's not a contract, that's a cage. Voss's hand twitched toward his derringer. But before he could draw, a new voice cut through the tension. Enough of this nonsense. It was Mrs. Ruth Tanner, a weary woman in her 50s, striding toward them from the general store. Her apron was stained with flour, and her gray eyes burned with a fire that made even Voss hesitate. Clara ain't your property, Harlan, and you know it. I saw what Varnell's men did to her. Those bruises didn't come from no accident. Voss's composure slipped for a moment, but he recovered quickly. Careful, Ruth, you're talking about things that could get you run out of town. Mr. Varnell's been generous to Iron Hollow, keeps the mines running, keeps your store stocked. You want to throw that away for some runaway with no family? No. Name no name, Ruth snapped, planting herself beside Elias. Her name's Clara Wade. As she's got more right to be here than a snake like you. She turned to Elias, her voice softening but urgent. The shadows stretched long across Iron Hollow as the sun sank behind the Rockies, casting the town in a golden glow that felt more like a warning than a promise. Elias Kane stood firm, his hands still near his Colt, Clara Wade trembling at his side, her locket glinting faintly in the fading light. Mrs. Ruth Tanner's defiance had sent Harlan Voss retreating for now, but the air buzzed with the threat of his return. Elias could feel the town watching, their whispers like dry leaves skittering across the street. Clara's bruises and that locket she clutched told a story deeper than debt, and Elias was starting to suspect it could burn this town to the ground. What was Clara running from, and what secret was worth more than her life? Stick around, folks, because the truth is about to hit harder than a stampede. Ruth led Elias and Clara to the back of her general store, where barrels of flour and crates of tinned goods formed a makeshift fortress against prying eyes. The air smelled of coffee and leather, but Clara's fear was a sharper scent. Cutting through the dim interior, she sat on an old stool, her hands shaking as she traced the locket's worn edges. You don't have to talk if you're not ready, Elias said softly, crouching to meet her gaze. But I need to know what we're up against. Varnell's not the kind of man to let you go easy. Clara's eyes flickered with something grief, maybe, or defiance. It's not just me he wants, she whispered, her voice hoarse. It's this. She opened the locket, revealing a tiny, folded scrap of paper tucked inside. Elias leaned closer, his heart pounding. It wasn't a photograph or a love token, but a map crude, drawn in charcoal, with a jagged line leading to a spot marked Silver Vein. Clara's voice trembled as she spoke. My brother, Tom, he found a silver deposit in the hills. Varnal wanted it, offered to buy our claim. When Tom refused, Varnal's men, they. Her words broke into a sob, and Ruth placed a steady hand on her shoulder. They killed him, didn't they? Elias asked, his voice low but burning with anger. Clara nodded, tears streaking her dirt-streaked face. They burned our cabin, left me for dead. Varnal took me in, said I owed him for saving me, but he just wanted the map. He thinks I know where the silver is. Ruth's face hardened. Varnal's been bleeding this town dry with his mines, but a new vein, that's worth killing. For he's got the sheriff, the judge, half the town council in his pocket. That map's the only thing keeping Clara alive and the only thing that'll bring him down. Elias studied the map, his mind racing. A silver vein could make a man richer than God in a town like this, but it could also spark a war. Why didn't you run sooner? He asked Clara. She looked away, her voice barely audible. I tried, but Varnal's men caught me, said if I ran again, they'd hurt the other women he's got trapped in that saloon, working off debts they'll never pay. Before Elias could respond, a crash echoed from the front of the store. Glass shattered, and heavy boots thudded against the wooden floor. Tanner, a voice bellowed. Harlan Voss, back with reinforcements. Elias drew his Colt and motioned for Clara to stay low. Ruth grabbed a shotgun from behind the counter. Her hands steadied despite her age. Back doors through the storeroom. She whispered, "Get Clara out of here." But Clara shook her head, her eyes fierce despite her fear. "I'm done running. That map's my brother's legacy. I won't let Varnal have it." Elias saw the fire in her, the kind that reminded him of his sister, stubborn, unbreakable, even when the world tried to crush her. He nodded, a silent promise to stand with her. The storeroom door burst open, and Voss stormed in with two of Varnal's hired guns, their revolvers gleaming in the lamplight. "Hand over the girl and that locket," Voss snarled, "or we burn this place down with you in it." Elias raised his gun, his voice cold as steel. "You'll have to kill me first, and I don't die easy." The room erupted in chaos. Ruth fired her shotgun, blasting a hole in the ceiling, and Elias dove for cover, pulling Clara behind a barrel. Bullets splintered wood, and the air filled with the acrid smell of gunpowder. Clara clutched the locket, her lips moving in a silent prayer. In that moment, Elias realized this wasn't just about saving her, it was about breaking Varnal's hold on Iron Hollow, about giving Clara and every soul trapped in this town a chance at freedom. But could one man and a battered map stand against an empire built on greed? What would you do, folks? Fight for a stranger's justice, or save your own skin? Drop it in the comments, because Elias Kane's about to make a move that'll shake this town to its core. The general store in Iron Hollow was a battlefield now, the air thick with gunpowder and the sharp crack of splintering wood. Elias Kane crouched behind a barrel, his Colt steady in his hand, as Harlan Voss and his hired guns fired wildly into the storeroom. Clara Wade clutched her locket, the tiny map inside it burning a hole in her resolve, while Mrs. Ruth Tanner reloaded her shotgun with the calm of a woman who'd faced worse than this. Bullets tore through crates, sending flour and tin cans flying, but Elias's eyes never left Clara. Her green eyes held a spark of defiance, a fire that refused to be snuffed out, and it reminded him why he couldn't walk away. Varnal's empire of greed had taken too much from this town, from Clara, from him. But what was the real cost of that locket, and what secret was Varnal so desperate to keep? Hang on, folks, because this fight's about to uncover a truth that'll turn Iron Hollow upside down. Elias fired a shot, catching one of Voss's men in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. "Clara, stay down," he shouted, as another bullet grazed the barrel, showering him with splinters. Ruth fired her shotgun again, the blast forcing Voss to duck behind a stack of crates. "You're macking a big mistake, Drifter," Voss yelled, his voice tight with rage. "Varnal's got this town locked up tighter than a bank vault. You think you can just waltz in and play hero? I ain't here to play," Elias growled, his mind racing. The map in Clara's locket wasn't just about silver, it was a threat to Varnal's control. A secret he'd kill to protect. Elias glanced at Clara, her face pale but resolute. "That map," he whispered, "where's it lead?" Clara's voice was steady despite the chaos. "To a canyon, 10 miles north. Tom said the vein's hidden in a cave, but it's not just silver. There's something else, something Varnell's scared of." Before Elias could press her, the storeroom's back wall shuddered. A new sound cut through the gunfire, the crackle of flames. Voss had made good on his threat. A torch flew through the broken window, landing in a pile of burlap sacks. Fire licked up the walls, smoke billowing thick and black. "Time's up," Voss shouted, laughing. "Hand over the girl, or you all burn," Ruth cursed, grabbing a bucket of water. But the flames spread faster than she could move. Elias pulled Clara to her feet, her locket swinging like a pendulum. "We're leaving," he said, his voice cutting through her panic. "Ruth, you with us?" Ruth nodded, her shotgun still in hand. "Ain't letting Varnell win this one." They scrambled toward the back door, the heat searing their backs. Outside, the alley was dark, the fire's glow casting eerie shadows. But as they emerged, a figure stepped from the darkness, a boy, no older than 16, with a shock of red hair and a rifle too big for his skinny frame. "You Mr. Kane?" he asked, his voice shaking but determined. "Name's Finn, Tom Wade's apprentice, Miss Clara. I thought you were dead." Clara's eyes widened, tears welling up. "Finn, you're alive." She grabbed his arm, her voice breaking. "Varnell's men said they got everyone at the claim." Finn shook his head, his face grim. "They missed me. Been hiding in the hills, waiting for a chance to find you. Tom told me about that map, said it's more than silver. It's proof." "Proof of what?" Elias asked, his gun still raised, scanning the alley for Voss's men. Finn's voice dropped to a whisper. "Varnell's been poisoning the miners. The water in his mines, it's tainted, macking folks sick. Tom found evidence in that cave. Papers he hid with the map. Varnell's covering it up, killing anyone who gets close." Elias's blood ran cold. Poisoned water, dead miners, a town held hostage. This was bigger than he'd imagined. Clara's locket wasn't just a map to riches. It was a key to Varnell's downfall. But the crackle of the fire grew louder, and shouts echoed from the street. Voss and his men were closing in, and the flames were cutting off their escape. Elias grabbed Clara's hand, his voice urgent. "We need to get to that cave, but first, we gotta survive the night." As they ran into the dark, Finn leading the way, Elias felt Clara's hand tighten in his. Her fear was still there, but so was her strength, a flame that refused to die. Could they outrun Varnell's men and uncover the truth before the town burned to ash? What would you risk for a secret that could save a town or destroy it? Tell me in the comments, because Elias and Clara are running out of time, and the truth is closer than they think. The night air in Iron Hollow was thick with smoke, the glow of the burning general store painting the sky an angry red. Elias Kane, Clara Wade, and young Finn sprinted through the shadowed alleys, the crackle of flames, and the shouts of Harlan Voss's men hot on their heels. Clara clutched her locket, the map inside it now a beacon of hope and danger. While Finn's rifle bounced against his skinny frame, Mrs. Ruth Tanner had stayed behind, her shotgun blazing to buy them time. But Elias knew the cost of this fight was climbing fast. The cave in the hills held the truth about Varnell's poisoned mines, proof that could free the town, or bury them all. But as they neared the edge of town, a betrayal was waiting, one that would turn their world upside down. What secret could break a man like Elias Kane? Hold tight, folks, because this twist will hit you like a runaway train. They ducked behind a rusted water tower, the pounding of boots growing closer. Elias checked his Colt, 3 bullets left. "Finn, you know these hills?" he asked, his voice low but urgent. The boy nodded, his freckled face pale but determined. "Like the back of my hand. Tom taught me every trail. The cave's hidden in a ravine, but it's a hard climb, especially at night." Clara's breath hitched, her green eyes glinting with resolve. "We have to get there. Tom's papers, their letters, signed by Varnell's foreman, admitting they knew the water was poisoned. They've been dumping chemicals from the mines into the river, killing miners, making kids sick. If we don't get those papers, Varnell will keep this town in chains." Elias nodded, his jaw tight. He'd seen towns like this before, crushed under the greed of men like Varnal. But Clara's fire, her refusal to break, stirred something. In him a memory of his sister, defiant to her last breath. "Then we move fast," he said. Scanning the darkness, "Finn, lead the way." They slipped into the scrubland beyond town, the rocky hills looming like silent sentinels. But as they reached a narrow ravine, a figure stepped from the shadows. Sheriff Amos Holt, his badge glinting under the moonlight. His revolver was already drawn, aimed at Elias's chest. "That's far enough, Drifter," Holt said, his voice cold as the Wyoming wind. "Hand over the girl and that map, or I put you down right here." Clara froze, her hand tightening on Elias's arm. Finn's eyes widened, his rifle trembling. "Sheriff," he stammered, "you're supposed to protect folks, not work for Varnal." Holt's laugh was bitter, hollow. "Protect? This town's been Varnal since before you were born. Kid, I keep the peace, and he keeps my pockets full. That's how it works." Elias's heart sank, but it was Clara's reaction that stopped him cold. Her face went white, not with fear, but with recognition. "You," she whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "You were there, the night Tom died. You didn't just look the other way, you helped Varnal's men burn our cabin." The words hit Elias like a bullet, and the plot twist unraveled. The sheriff wasn't just corrupt, he was complicit in murder. A traitor to the badge Elias had once worn. Holt's eyes narrowed, his grip on the revolver tightening. "You should've stayed quiet, Clara. That map's your death warrant, and now this Drifter's too." He cocked the hammer, but Elias was faster, diving forward and tackling Holt to the ground. The gun fired, the bullet grazing Elias's shoulder, searing pain through his arm. Clara screamed, grabbing Finn's rifle and swinging it like a club, catching Holt across the jaw. He crumpled, unconscious, as Finn stared, wide-eyed. "Miss Clara, you're plumb crazy." Elias staggered to his feet, blood soaking his shirt. "Crazy's what's keeping us alive," he muttered, tying Holt's hands with his own belt. Clara's eyes met his, a mix of guilt and gratitude. "I didn't know it was him," she said, her voice breaking. "All this time, I thought it was just Varnal's men. If I'd known the sheriff was involved." "You couldn't have known," Elias said, his voice steady despite the pain. "But we've got him now, and that map's our chance to end this." He glanced at the ravine, the cave's entrance just visible in the moonlight. But shouts echoed from the town boss, and his men were closing in, and the fire's glow meant Ruth's stand was faltering. Time was running out, and the cave held answers that could either save Iron Hollow or doom them all. Would you face a traitor to save a town, or run when the odds are stacked against you? Drop it in the comments, because Elias and Clara are about to risk everything for the truth. The moon hung low over the Wyoming hills, casting a silver glow on the jagged ravine where Elias Kane, Clara Wade, and young Finn raced toward the hidden cave. The distant roar of the burning general store echoed behind them, mingling with the shouts of Harlan Voss and his men, closing in like wolves on a wounded deer. Clara's locket, with its precious map, bounced against her chest, a reminder of her brother Tom's sacrifice and the proof that could shatter Varnal's empire. Elias's shoulder throbbed from the sheriff's bullet, but his grip on his cold was steady, fueled by a fire he hadn't felt in years. They were so close to the truth letters proving Varnal's poisoned minds, but the cost of justice was about to demand everything they had. Could they bring down a tyrant and save a town, or would Iron Hollow's secrets die in that cave? Stay with me, folks, because this ending will leave you speechless. They reached the cave's mouth, a narrow slit in the rock barely wide enough for Finn to slip through. "This is it," Finn whispered, his voice trembling with hope and fear. Tom hid the papers in a tin box, back by the spring. Clara nodded, her green eyes fierce despite the exhaustion etched into her face. "We get those letters, we end this," she said, her voice steady as steel. Elias scanned the ravine, the sound of hoof beats growing louder. Voss was coming, and he wasn't alone. Inside the cave, the air was cool and damp, the faint trickle of water echoing off the walls. Finn led them to a small alcove, where a rusted tin box lay half buried under loose stones. Clara knelt, her hands shaking as she pried it open. Inside were letters, dozens of them, written in Tom's careful hand, detailing Varnell's orders to dump mining chemicals into the river, knowing it would sicken workers and their families. One letter was different, though, a note from Tom to Clara, stained with blood. "I'm sorry, sis." It read, "If I don't make it, you're the flame that'll light the way. Keep fighting." Clara's sob echoed in the cave, and Elias's heart twisted, his own sister's face flashing in his mind. But there was no time for grief. Lantern light flickered at the cave's entrance, and Voss's voice boomed. "End of the line, Drifter. Hand over the girl and those papers, or we bury you here." Elias pushed Clara and Finn behind a boulder, his Colt ready. "Stay back," he whispered, then called out, "You want these papers, Voss? Come and get 'em." The cave erupted in gunfire, bullets ricocheting off the walls like angry hornets. Elias fired back, dropping one of Varnell's men, but Voss was relentless, his derringer flashing in the dark. Finn scrambled to help, tossing rocks to distract the gunmen while Clara clutched the tin box, her eyes blazing with determination. "Elias," she shouted over the chaos, "we can't let them win." Her words lit a spark in him, and he fought with a ferocity he didn't know he had, each shot a promise to protect her, to honor Tom's sacrifice. Then a new sound cut through the gunfire hooves, dozens of them, thundering into the ravine. Lanterns blazed, and voices shouted, "Federal marshals, drop your weapons." Elias's heart leapt. Ruth Tanner had made it out, sent word to the authorities before the store burned. Voss froze, his face twisting with rage, but the marshals swarmed the cave, their rifles trained on him and his men. "You're done, Voss," Elias said, stepping forward, blood dripping from his shoulder. "And so's Varnell." The marshals arrested Voss and his surviving men, and Clara handed over the letters, her hands steady now. "Thecil, bring him down," she told the lead marshal, her voice strong. "For Tom, for the miners, for this town." The marshal nodded, his face grim. "We've been tracking Varnell for months. This is the proof we needed." 3 months later, Iron Hollow was a different place. Varnell was in chains, his empire crumbling under the weight of federal charges for poisoning, murder, and fraud. The poisoned river was being cleaned, and the miners' families had hope again. Clara stood in a new garden outside Ruth Tanner's rebuilt store, planting seeds where ash had once fallen. Her auburn hair gleamed in the sun, and her locket now held a new note, a promise to herself to keep fighting, to be the flame Tom believed in. Finn, now apprenticed to a local blacksmith, waved from across the street, his grin bright as the Wyoming sky. Elias, his shoulder healed, wore a new badge, not a marshal's, but a sheriff's, elected by a town that saw him as their protector. He caught Clara's eye, and she smiled, a quiet warmth passing between them, the kind that hinted at a future neither had dared to dream of. "You staying, Sheriff Kane?" she asked, her voice teasing, but hopeful. Elias tipped his hat, his own smile rare but genuine. "Reckon I've found something worth staying for." This tale's a reminder, folks, that in the Wild West, courage wasn't just about drawing a gun, it was about standing up when the odds were against you. Historically, mining towns like Iron Hollow faced real scandals, with greedy barons poisoning land and lives for profit. The 1880s saw brave folks, miners, women, even kids fight back, paving the way for labor reforms we benefit from today. What would you have done in Clara's shoes, run or fight for justice? Drop it in the comments, hit that like button, and subscribe for more Wild West stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Check out the next video for a tale with a twist even wilder than this one.